What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. And if you guys haven't seen my last video, we had some issues with the car at the track, and today we're going to try to see if we can figure out what's going on and fix the nitrous system. Now, yesterday at the track, we were able to get a bunch of runs in, and I think the most we've ever been able to get. We have got about 5 runs in. I messed up 2 of them, and on the very last one, we had a major system failure in the nitrous kit. Luckily, I had something that potentially saved this car's engine from major catastrophic damage. The fuel system in this nitrous kit is a standalone system, which means that if it fails, I don't necessarily am going to see any failures or any issues with the mains engine system in general. But if it does fail, then it can be very catastrophic, because that means that if you have your nitrous on and you decide to run and spray the nitrous, and all you're spraying is nitrous and your fuel is just dribbling in or not existent at all, then you can have some major catastrophic engine failures, because the car will really run hot and lean, and it is gonna be a very, very bad day for your engine if that happens. So luckily, I had this fuel pressure safety switch here, and basically this switch here is similar to our bottle heater for our nitrous pressure, and under 35 psi this thing will actually open up the circuit, and it is wired into our nitrous relay in the ground side. So as long as the fuel pressure in our gauge is reading above 35 psi, or in our case we have it set at 62 psi, then the ground switch, the safety switch is closed, so we have a solid ground to our relay, and everything operates as normal, and we are one happy-go-lucky family. But if the fuel pressure drops, that switch then opens up the circuit and eliminates the ground from the relay, and without a ground you do not get power to your solenoids. So even with the nitrous armed and our controller calling and triggering the relay to power on and spray the nitrous in the fuel, it will not actually do anything, because the relay does not have the ground to provide the power. So the car will basically run without the nitrous, even though it is armed, which is really, really awesome, and is probably what saved this engine from major damage at the track last night. One of the things that I didn't mention last night was, even though the nitrous didn't spray, the armed and nitrous controller system actually was sending signals to our timing box, to our engine filter timing box here, to pull 6 degrees of timing even when we weren't spraying, because of course the controller doesn't know that the fuel pressure has dropped and to not send the signal. So the car ran a 10.9 at 129 miles an hour on 6 degrees of pulled timing throughout pretty much the whole run. So that is impressive. That means the car is running very good and really, really strong. It probably could have ran maybe a 10.7 in the low 130s had we had the full 6 degrees of timing down the whole run, which is very impressive. Also means that I think this Velocitec Ram Air piece that I ordered for $160 was well worth it, because it got up to increased mile an hour. I got about almost 2 miles an hour faster in worse DA. So all that is really, really very, very impressive. But with all that being said, guys, I'm glad and happy that I had the safety switch there. The engine survived and is working beautifully, having zero issues with that. Now it's time to diagnose what could be the issue. So here we've got the fuel tank, guys, and I've removed the top, and you can see, I mean, there's still quite a bit of fuel in there, so we should be able to see pressure. So we've got the car in accessory mode. Now we'll go ahead and we're gonna arm the switch and go check our fuel pressure gauge at the engine bay. And when we arm it, you'll actually hear the pump running, and even though it's running, it was running at the track last night, we still weren't generating pressure. So hopefully we get some better results today. So definitely hearing the pump running, and unfortunately you guys can see here it's only about 5 psi, so it's not getting as much as it needs, and that's what was happening at the track. And if we go back here, you can hear, I mean, it is circulating, but it looks like it might be leaking something. So we'll go ahead, and what we're gonna do is actually turn this off. All right, guys, so looks like we might have a leak in the pump itself. So what I'm gonna do actually is I'm going to try to drain C16 out of here so that we can get somewhat clear access into the pump, see what's inside that pump, and maybe with a vacuum disconnected a line or something didn't go right, and we can go in there and fix that, because it is generating some pressure. We were getting about 5 psi of pressure, but it wasn't the 62 that we normally would get. So I don't know if maybe there's a bypass or something's wrong internally in the pump. The pump's still running, but it's not creating the pressure that we need, and it's kind of gurgling and burping from the pump side here, whereas normally all the return line stuff should be in the backside, and you shouldn't see any type of like burpings in the opening here. So let's go ahead and the way I'm gonna drain this is using the same pump. Since it's still pumping and sucking in, we're gonna drain it from the engine bay. So I've got the fuel line here that went to the solenoid disconnected, and it looks like it's working. I can hear it pumping some out, but then we go back here and man, that thing sucked it dry completely, so there wasn't much at all. Okay, let's go ahead and turn this off. Well, we took the pump out, and I tried removing this top cover, but these bolts actually have a nut on the bottom side, and I probably could have put a tool, but it was going to be very difficult to get a tool under here and to get all that done with all this in the way. So I was able to disconnect the hose line, which actually I think might be an issue, guys, because as you guys can see, these lines are using kind of like a crimped clamp, and I was able to pop it off. It seemed like it was already popped off, and you know, we've got our connector there. It seemed like it was already removed because I was easily able to slip this off of the fuel pump. When I tried to install this line on the fuel pump here outside to see if it was sealing right, it took a lot of pressure and a lot of force to get that to seat all the way in. And remember, whenever we were running it, that I was seeing kind of like fuel popping up and burbling up from around the fuel pump. Well, that could basically be a leak, because from the moment it leaves the outside of the pump, guys, and goes through this lines all the way to the front of the car, it needs to all be sealed. So if this is leaking or not tight in there and is leaking, then we're gonna have no pressure up at the front, because the fuel is basically getting sucked in from the back of the pump, coming through the pump, and then right outside. So it's just circulating in this little area here. And yes, it creates enough of a seal that it can push fuel to the front, but under pressure, the fuel will leak out of here. So what I'm gonna try to do is put this fuel pump back in. Everything goes, it just slides and slips into this hole down here. You guys can see it's got a kind of like a place for the pump to be set and stationary. And then I'm gonna see if I can slip this all the way seated forward. All right, so I was finally able to kind of finagle it, and it is right around the lip. I think it's made it all the way around. I'm gonna try to push as much forward as I can. It's really tight fit. And then we'll plug back up the connector. We'll put a little bit of fuel in there, and we'll try it again. And hopefully we won't see any more burbling around the fuel pump area, which will mean that this is nice and sealed. And if not, then this clamp might just have lost its seal, and I might have to get a worm clamp or a different one. Okay, so I've put in just a little bit of fuel, and the goal is to run it and see if we get any leak or any leaking fuel around the pump fuel there. And hopefully that should be enough fuel. I don't know if the pump needs to be in a certain direction, but the fuel sock should catch a pickup no matter what, and we'll see what happens. So we're gonna turn the pump on, and I don't see any leak anymore. Let's see, the fuel pressure actually feels pretty solid. I don't feel any leaks around here. Let's see what the fuel pressure is at the engine bay. Hey, check it out. 61 PSI. Yes. Yes, that was it, guys. That hose just must have popped out. It's getting solid pressure now. So I came to do the final test, and guys, this thing was already slipping out of the nose, which means this little clamp here is no good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a small worm clamp, and we're going to go ahead and use that instead to make sure that we never have this happen again. Worm clamp is installed, so now we're going to go ahead and do one last turn on before we start filling it up. Make sure that it still builds pressure and we don't have any leaks. If that tests good, then we'll fill it up, and then we'll run it again and do a final check, but we'll be good to go, guys. And this is the clamp that was on before. As you can see, this is one of those clamps that basically just kind of pinches and clamps in one way, but once it's on there, you can't really tighten it more. So I guess it kind of just gave way with the heat. And C16 tank is full, and we have full pressure. That is right, guys. We were able to figure it out. Again, guys, I cannot stress enough how important it is to have safety features on your nitrous skid, especially if you're going to be doing standalone things like that. If I wouldn't have had that fuel pressure safety switch, then I could have potentially been making a video about how I blew up my motor running nitrous. But having all these safety features built in allowed me to save my engine and live to fight another day. So car's back up and running, and hopefully we'll be back at the track soon to try and get that 9-second pass. But for now, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.